This is Anona's Worship, Grow, Serve, Live podcast for March 3rd, 2024. Peacemaker Part 3, Traps, Truth-Telling, and Traitors, with Reverend Jeremy Herrington. This is one of our sermon series episodes produced by Anona United Methodist Church. For more information and video versions, visit anona.com/sermon series. If you're new to Anona and wish to learn more about our community, go to anona.com/welcome. And now for another great message.
Just in case you didn't catch it from the video, our theme is about peacemakers. That's right, we're talking about peace and peacemakers. First question I want to kind of throw out to you, just a rhetorical question here. When you think of peacemakers, people who you would say, these are people who are just true peacemakers, who are the kind of people you would think about? Maybe someone like Mother Teresa, right? Someone who is just a true peacemaker to her community and to the world around her, or someone like Mahatma Gandhi, that also was just a very strong proponent for peace, or maybe Nelson Mandela. I want to add another name to the list of peacemakers. I would like to add the name Indiana Jones. Now, go with me for just a minute, okay? Stay with me. In case you don't know, Indiana Jones, he is the illustrious archaeologist and adventurer. You might have seen his movies, Raiders of the Lost Ark and Temple of Doom and all those different movies that Harrison Ford filmed over the years. Here's the thing. Now, while Dr. Jones handles conflict a little aggressively, with a bullwhip and a six-shooter, I will say that deep down underneath that brown fedora and that leather jacket is just this wonderful, peace-loving college professor who just loves to teach students about history and about archaeology and to give lots of rare artifacts to his local museum. So I really do think he's got kind of that peacemaking vibe there. In fact, his last movie that just came out last summer, it's called Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Now, spoiler alert, I'm going to talk about this movie, so if you haven't seen it yet, it's been 9 months. Just saying, if you haven't seen it now, just plug your ears for the next 3 minutes. But here's the thing. Back when this movie came out last summer, Dial of Destiny, it started in 1944 because it was the end of World War II, and they introduced this character. He was an evil Nazi astrophysicist, and his name was Jürgen Wöhler, and he was searching for this rare artifact called the Archimedes dial. And there were 2 parts to it, and he had to find the pieces, and believe it or not, they had a young Harrison Ford. I don't know how they made an 80-year-old look like 20, but somehow they made that work, and they're battling back in the 40s there during World War II, and then the movie fast forwards about 25 years. So it's no longer the 1940s, it's now 1969, and we're right on the cusp of the Apollo space program. Any of y'all were here for the Apollo space program in 1969? Yeah, not me. So, nope, sorry. Wasn't here. I was born after that one, just saying. But I understand what happened back then in 1969 was there was this big rush, right? We had to beat the Russians, we had to get to the moon, and we had to get this program going. And in this movie, this is a fictional movie, so it's not real, but in this movie, Wöhler, that Nazi from the 40s, is still alive because he's an astrophysicist, and he's actually working with the CIA because they need his help, his brilliant knowledge for the space program. But then Wöhler wants to use the CIA to help him nab these Archimedes dials, and he's very nefarious. And so you end up with CIA and these couple of Nazis actually working together. You want to talk about 2 completely different groups of people teaming up together to get Dr. Jones, because they got to get him, they got to get that Archimedes dial before Jones finds it. And so there's all these adventures. He goes all over the world and goes scuba diving and goes all around finding these cool things. And eventually, at the end of the movie, Jones outsmarts the CIA, just was able to work around them, and that Nazi Wöhler actually perishes in the end of the movie. And the coolest part is Dr. Jones even wins his true love's heart back in the end of the movie and finally gets the peace that he deserves. Just a great, and I look at that going, what a great peacemaker he is. Wow, just a great another peacemaker. Now, there's a lot of peacemakers out there. Today, we're also going to talk about another, I think, very well-known peacemaker. You might know him. His name is Jesus. he's a peacemaker as well. And our scripture this morning is just, I think, a great example of Jesus and his peacemaking skills and what we can learn for us today. So we're going to delve into the Gospel of Mark, and this is chapter 12, verses 13 through 17. Now, the chapter title for this story is called The Question of Paying Taxes. Can you hear the music? Dun, 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 dun. Indiana Jones and the Lost 1040 tax return. We'll find something. Anyways, the question of paying taxes is here. I know, nobody laughed at that one either. I don't know. I thought it was funny. So, question of paying taxes. And here's what it says, verse 13. Then they sent to him some Pharisees and some Herodians to trap him in what he said. They're trying to trap Jesus. And they came to him and said, Teacher, we know that you are just so sincere, and you show deference to no one, for you do not regard people with partiality, but teach in the way of God in accordance with the truth. Isn't that sweet? Oh, they're just talking so nice about Jesus. Now, then they ask the question, is it lawful to pay taxes to the emperor or not? Should we pay them or should we not? But knowing their hypocrisy, he said to them, why are you putting me to the test? Bring me a denarius, which is a coin, and let me see it. And they brought one. Then he said to them, whose head is on this coin and whose title? And they answered, the emperor's. And Jesus says to them, give to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and give to God the things that are God's. And they were utterly amazed at him. The word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Now, I want to dive a little deeper into this story here because, I confess, I've heard this passage. Have any of y'all heard this passage before, right? And I got to confess, when I heard it, it wasn't exactly very adventurous for me. I wasn't thinking Indiana Jones when I was thinking the story and all these things. But when you look deeper at this passage, there's a lot of very interesting nuances, I think, to help us understand. First is talking about the Pharisees and the Herodians, two different groups of people involved in this story. And they're trying to trap Jesus in front of his other people that he's with at the time. But I think it's first important for us to know who was trying to spring this trap. Who are the Pharisees and who are the Herodians? Let's talk about the Pharisees first, right? The Pharisees, these are the religious legal experts, right? These are Jews who carry very strong religious beliefs. They know all the laws. They know how things are supposed to go. And they will tell you exactly, this is the law. This is what you got to do. If you're going to be a good Jew, you got to follow this and do this. Don't forget that. And they're going to make sure that people are following all those important religious laws. But here's the thing about Pharisees. The Pharisees hate, and I mean hate, the Roman occupiers. At this time in history, Rome is occupying, right? There, you've got Roman soldiers, you've got Roman emperors, and the Pharisees just hate that they have these Roman people involved and they are running things. They wish they could just run it themselves. They have to deal with these people because it's the way it is. So Pharisees are there, and they just hate the Romans. Now, over here, you have the Herodians. Now, who are the Herodians? The Herodians, it's actually not a political party. I assumed it was a political party, but it wasn't. It's not a political party, and it's not a religious sect. It's not a religion. Herodians are just influential Jewish supporters who support the Herodian dynasty. What does that mean? That means they support Herod Antipas. Herod Antipas is the ruler of Galilee. And guess what? He's Roman. And he's from the Roman occupiers that are there occupying that country there. And so these are Jewish supporters saying, Rome is great. You don't understand. We love having them here. Look, we got nice roads. We've got great architecture going on. We got school, all these different things. There's law. We have law and order happening. So it's a good thing for us to have Rome occupying us. So you've got Pharisees that are the Jewish religious experts who hate Romans, and you have the Herodians who love the fact that the Romans are here and they are partnering together against Jesus. You want to talk about two completely different groups teaming up. I just find it very hard how do they even get along? I mean, I can't imagine these two parties going, hey, we know you hate Rome and we love them, but we're gonna work together because we got to get rid of this problem person, Jesus. And they figure out a way to do it. I don't know, but they do, and they team up. And as they're trying to get rid of Jesus, they first start by buttering him up with a little bit of hypocrisy. Right? They start in that passage, teacher, we know you're sincere. You don't show deference to other people. You know the ways of God and according to truth. And so they're just kind of buttering up Jesus. Oh, God, Jesus, you're a great person. And then they spring the trap. And it's a very simple trap. Here's the thing. They ask Jesus, is it lawful to pay your taxes to the emperor or not? Now, let's look at that from two different perspectives. If Jesus were to answer that question, yes, and Jesus were to say, yes, it's lawful to pay your taxes, he would anger all the Jewish people around him. He would anger the Pharisees. The Pharisees would immediately turn and point to Jesus going, see, he is with the Roman occupiers. He is not one of us. We need to get rid of him. And so the Pharisees were waiting for Jesus to say yes. Now, on this other side, you have the Herodians. The Herodians were there, and they were waiting for Jesus to say no. Why is that important? Because if Jesus says, no, you should not pay your taxes, he would be seen as a rebel against Rome. And Herodians, we know, really love the Roman occupiers, right? And so they could immediately scoop up Jesus and say, he is a rebel, he is a traitor, we need to take him to the Roman rulers at the time and punish him because he says we should not pay our taxes. So they were waiting for him to say no. Can you see the trap? So what does Jesus do? And Jesus knew what they were up to. He knew that they were just trying to set him up for this. So instead, he asks such an innocuous question. I love this. He says, bring me a denarius, which was a coin, a Roman coin, and let me see it. And they brought one. Now, I kind of dismissed that when I first read the passage. And then when I read some of the commentaries, they said, please realize that's an important moment. Why is that important? Because according to Jewish law, the making of images was forbidden. If you were a good Jew, you could not carry an image of any person on you, and that included coins. So if you were a good Jew, you could not have a coin with a picture of anybody, the emperor or anyone. They actually had separate coinage for the Jews that did not show images. I don't know what it showed. Maybe it was plants or buildings or who knows. I don't know. But it wasn't images because according to Jewish law, they could not carry an engraved image. And so by Jesus asking to get one of these coins, he's showing that he did not carry one on him. He didn't pull one out of his pocket and go, hey, look, I got a denarius. No. He can be seen as a good Jew because the Pharisees go, wait a minute, he doesn't have one of those coins on him. We can't find fault with him because he's had to ask for one of these. I think it's kind of funny that he was given one. I'm assuming probably by the Herodians. It would really be funny if he was given it by the Pharisees, but I'm pretty sure that probably didn't happen. But he says, give me a coin. Okay, so they give him a coin there. And Jesus asks the next question. He says, well, whose head is on this coin and what's their title? And they answer, the emperor's. And Jesus says, give to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's. So what he's saying in effect is, see these coins, they bear an image of an emperor, and these coins might be his. That's just kind of the way it is. But you and I bear the image of God. And as bearing the image of God, we belong to God. And that's far more important than any old coin that we have in these moments. And the Herodians, as they were listening to Jesus, they couldn't find him at fault either, because what was he saying? He said, well, give to the emperor what's his. He didn't say, no, that you don't have to pay your taxes there. And so there was nothing the Herodians could do either. So Jesus really in that moment is just a powerful peacemaker. And I think for me, as I look at this and reflect on the passage and how he treated that moment there, for me, it's the fact that Jesus addresses this moment of conflict with truth in love, with humility. Three important words in that. Truth in love with humility. Because here's the reality. For us, we all handle conflict differently, right? In fact, I've talked to a sermon in the past about conflict. I'm going to do a quick summary of it here in case you don't remember or you weren't here for it. But we use a tool here at Anona. It's actually with our new staff that is called a conflict assessment. And the conflict assessment helps the person understand themselves and how they handle conflict. And they break it down into one of 4 basic categories, okay? First category says the person could handle conflict aggressively. That's the Indiana Jones, right? I handle it with a 6-shooter and a bullwhip, and I go right in fighting the Nazis of that, That's the kind of conflict I deal with. It's aggressive. Or you might be what's called defensive. You're not aggressive. You're not going out and attacking in those moments, but you are defending it like a Hollywood prosecuting attorney, right? You got your list, you got your evidence, you know exactly what's going to happen, and don't you understand X, Y, Z? Go down the list there. I was laughing because as I was researching this, I was remembering back to an old TV series I used to watch many years ago. It's called L.A. Law. Any of y'all watch that from years ago? Yeah, it was a great TV series, I don't know that it painted the best portrayal of lawyers, but, it was an interesting series. Sorry, Paul. So Paul's a good lawyer, by the way. So, but they had a character on the show, and his name was Arnie Becker. Arnie Becker was the divorce attorney. And if you ever watch those episodes, he played the dirtiest tricks. He was awful. I mean, he just did everything possible to win his case at any cost. He was going to win that case. He didn't matter who got hurt, what happened, but the truth was going to get out, and he was going to win. That's defensive. That's defensive. So whether your style might be aggressive or defensive, the thing is both of those emphasize the need for truth. Right? We need the truth to come out. If we're in a conflict, you need to know the truth, and I'm going to fight you for it, or I'm going to give you the 28 reasons why I'm right and you're wrong. But here's the thing. In that form of conflict, when the truth is told, it's told at the cost of the relationship with that person. Reminds me of a story. In a previous life, I was a music director for many years, including here, but I knew a music director friend of mine, and we were talking about auditioning choir members. In some choirs, there's auditions, and he was telling me the story. He says, yeah, I had this guy come and audition for my choir, and so he sang for me, and he was awful. I mean, he was terrible. He couldn't carry a tune. He couldn't match a pitch. It was like 16 different keys he was singing in. His vowels were terrible there. And I said, well, how did you handle that situation? And he looks at me and he says, I told him he was terrible. I went, really? And he said, yeah, I told him he was awful and he shouldn't sing and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, what happened? He says, well, then this weird thing happened. The guy cried. I said, he cried? He says, yeah, and I don't understand why. Not sure why he cried. And so this is a great pastoral moment for me. I was like, do you think maybe you hurt his feelings? I don't know. But he couldn't sing. I said, yeah, I got the truth. The truth is, this guy couldn't sing a tune in a bucket, all right? But maybe how you told him, you might have hurt his feelings. You might have hurt that relationship. So when we talk about aggressive and defensive, truth's out there, but we hurt the relationship. Now, there's 2 more styles, and that's over here. The other 2 styles, next one is called passive. Passive people for conflict, they will endure it. I will sit here and I will endure whatever conflict's happening. I will deal with it. Lord, be with me. I'm just going to get through this. Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. I'm just going to survive it. And I'm not going to say a word. I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings. I don't want to say anything wrong. I really, I value the other person, and I'm just not going to address it. Or my favorite, which is evasive. Evasive says, hey, if conflict's over here, I'm over here. All right, see ya, I'm leaving. All right, if there's conflict, I'm just going to avoid it entirely. I'm not going to call that person. I'm not going to talk to them. I see them down the hallway. I'm going to run the other way. Okay, see you later. And so whether you're passive or evasive, we emphasize love over truth, right? We care about the relationship so much, we don't want to hurt them, but we're not willing to address the truth that was in the room with the conflict. And here's the funny thing. People on this side think it's better option than this side. We really do, because I'm on this side, just so we're clear. I'm passive-evasive in my style, and we feel like, oh, we got the right answer, because we want to keep the person nice and happy, but we realize it's just as harmful for them if we never talk about the truth in that moment. So, How do we walk through those situations? Whether we emphasize truth, whether we emphasize love, whatever direction we come with when we deal with conflict, the challenge and the hope is to get to the center, what we call truth in love. Say that with me. Truth in love. And that is so important because that means that truth can be shared because truth needs to be shared, but there is genuine love for the other person. There's love for that relationship. There's that love. There's that connection. Love your neighbor as, who said that? I think it was Jesus, wasn't it? Yeah. That we're called to love. And that we speak truth, not to call out others' hypocrisy by simply bashing them with the truth, all right? I got the truth, here it is, I'm just gonna beat you silly with it, and I think as Christians, sometimes we do that, because I know I have. We feel like we've got the truth, we know what's going on, and we're just gonna beat them till Jesus and them figure it out. And that's not helpful, because in those moments there, our faith becomes not supportive, but a weapon. And we lose the ability to live out Christ's message of love and humility, which is the other side as well. So when we speak truth, we have to remember to value that relationship, that we are called to care about the other person and their feelings. And it's important because that teaches us how we speak truth in love, right? Remember the old saying, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And that's important. The other big kind of realization for me, I'm a very black and white person, sadly. I'll look at it, okay, right, wrong, okay, good guys, bad guys, okay, got it. And I realize as I'm looking at this story, Jesus died not just for you and me, but Jesus died for the Pharisees and the Herodians of this world too, right? And we need to own that. It's not just for you and me. It's not just when we're good or we know what we think is right. Jesus was there for all of us. That we can speak truth in love, and here's the third word, with humility. What's humility? That's our willingness to put the other person first in that moment of conflict. When we're dealing with a conflict with someone, whether it's a family member or a friend or a neighbor or just somebody online that you have a conflict with, can we be the first person to lay down our weapons? Can we be the first person to reach out an open hand? Can we be the first person even to offer an embrace in those moments? Philippians chapter 2, verse 3, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility regard others as better than yourselves. And I think sometimes when we are focused on the truth, we forget that, right? We think we know the answer and we know what's going to happen and we're better than them and we're just going to hit them with it until they figure it out. We need to know to think better of others, to regard them higher than us in those moments. So what does this mean for you and for me? Well, first, my encouragement for you, get to know yourself. If you don't know how you handle conflict, it would be a good experience for you to figure that out. Now, there's tests we use. I forget the name of the one we use here, conflict assessment by somebody. But there's tests online and things like that. Or here's a cool thing. You can actually ask the people around you and your family that know you well. But here's the funny thing about the test. If you ask someone who's a truther, they're going to tell it straight up. Yeah, man, you're like that. Sorry. Or if you ask someone who really is more on the love side, they're going to have a hard time probably really telling it to you. So you have to be careful who you ask. But explore what it means to know yourself in times of conflict and stress. Do you lean more on the truth? Do you lean more on love? And in seeking to be a peacemaker that you and I are called to be, are you willing from whatever direction to move closer to that center to seek truth in love and to walk that journey with humbleness? My own life, this has been a powerful lesson for me. Many of y'all know my family live in the area. My mom and dad have been with us for a number of years, just down the road. Mom, about 3 years ago, was diagnosed with dementia. And for about 3 years, it was kind of just a slow effect and over time. And the past month or so, we've seen a very sharp decline in her health. We have the past month been constantly in emergency rooms and in hospitals. Mom right now is actually in an assisted living center getting therapy. And let me say, this has been probably one of the most challenging times for my family in many, many years, because we're having to walk through some very tough conversations. Very tough. Conversations about mom and her health, conversations about dad and how he's doing, conversations about myself, my brother Josh. He lives up in Seattle. He actually flew down. He was planning to come for a visit and made sure he was here to be with us as we were navigating and wrestling with all that was happening in these moments there. And I realize as I reflect on myself, I tend to fall over here on that love side, right? I want my family to get along. I want to be the nice guy. I'm probably going to have a hard time dealing with the truth in the room. And when I have to step over here, and there are times that I do, and I think we all do, it's hard for me. And it's hard because many times I do it without the ability of having the humility. And I become that attorney, right? That Hollywood attorney, because I'm not comfortable operating in truth. And so I tend to hit people with it, including my own family. This is what we got to do. Are you listening to me? This is the right answer. No, don't do that. Do this. Oh, have you done that? You know, and I realize in these moments as we're wrestling through this, I need to be able to step back from that. Because in these moments, if I'm to be a peacemaker for my family, I have to remember that, a lot of things in life I can't change. And we're wrestling with some of those right now. But the one thing I can change is how I respond in these situations. I can change how I respond. And so when I remember that it's not about me, when I can focus on putting my family or my friends, whoever else is in that conflict moment, putting them first, loving them right where they are, that's when I can begin to speak truth in love with humility. And hopefully become a better peacemaker for my own family. And here's the beautiful gift. So can you. So can you? Because my wonderment is maybe you're dealing with your own moments of conflict in your life. Now, maybe not now, maybe sometime in the future, or maybe just right now. There's conflict in your home or with family or friends or loved ones or just something going on that you've been wrestling with and it's been hard. Maybe you find yourself on one of these two sides, that you're dealing with the truth and this has got to be told and handled and why don't people listen? Or I'm over here on the love side saying, why can't we all just get along and figure this out? Wherever you stand, I want to invite you in your journey to seek that center, that truth in love, as we walk that journey in humility. And it all can begin at this table. Communion is one of those beautiful places for us where we can come before God's throne of grace, where we seek forgiveness for the ways that we mess up, and we do, if we're honest with ourselves, I do. And we're willing to seek that heart of love and truth in our life and in our journey. And that's what I want to invite you to this morning. One of the beautiful traditions about communion that I always love is the act when at the close of bringing the broken pieces of bread back together. That even in our brokenness, we are called to be made whole in Jesus Christ. And my prayer for you this week is this. When moments of conflict arise in your life, and maybe you're in the middle of one, maybe it's yet to come, are you willing to bring truth into the room while holding on to your love for that other person? Truth in love. And do it with a humbleness that Mother Teresa or Gandhi or Nelson Mandela or even Dr. Jones would approve. And become a peacemaker for your family and for the world. God calls us to this life, and the world really needs it.
If you found this message meaningful, share it with others. To find more great episodes and stay up to date, subscribe to Anona United Methodist Church's podcast on Apple Music, Spotify, or anywhere you find your favorite podcast shows. In addition, subscribe to our channel on YouTube and find the community on Facebook at facebook.com/Anona Church. You can join us on our campus in Largo, Florida, and discover new ways to reach out to the Pinellas County community. Be a part of the Anona Church family as we worship, grow, serve, and live.